It began with silence, not the serene kind that whispers peace into the soul, but the hollow, unnatural stillness that comes after something immense has fallen. Earth had not seen war for decades, united not by love but by the memory of suffering, the way broken bones remind us never to leap recklessly again. When the signal came from the edge of the solar system, it shattered that silence with a frequency unlike anything we had encountered before, not random, not chaotic, but deliberate. A rhythmic pulse that echoed in every observatory and satellite dish, forming a language built on pressure and patience. At first, we thought it was natural, a pulsar, a cosmic anomaly. But as the weeks stretched on, the pattern grew more refined, as if waiting for us to notice, to acknowledge. That's when Project Halcyon was reactivated. It had always existed in the background, a relic of Cold War paranoia, a secret collective of scientists, linguists, mathematicians, and one war-hardened veteran with the strange title, First Contact Architect. I was that architect. My name is Commander Alex Rourke, and I was pulled from quiet retirement in the Canadian Rockies with a single encrypted message: they're here. I arrived at Lunar Relay Station Vesta, a hushed, underfunded outpost floating on the edge of Moon's dark side. The signal was stronger here, less distorted by Earth's noise. Our team, including Dr. Miyako Tanaka, an AI linguistics expert, and Major Elijah Brandt, a tactician with no enemy to fight, had spent the last 10 days decoding the transmission. What we uncovered was both exhilarating and terrifying, a clear request to meet in a precise location near Jupiter's moon, Europa. Not a threat. Not an invasion. A meeting. But behind that apparent civility, the message contained something chilling. A timestamp counting down to 0. Not in hours or days, but in cycles we couldn't identify. When it hits 0, the message warned human destiny will converge. What that meant was anyone's guess. Diplomats squabbled behind screens, defense grids quietly shifted, and the great powers of Earth did what they always do when frightened. They prepared for war while pretending to seek peace. I knew this pattern too well, fear disguised as strategy, diplomacy used as camouflage. And yet I couldn't help but feel awe. Something was out there and they wanted to talk. But why now? Why us? What did we become to draw the gaze of another intelligence? The countdown pressed onward and every second rang louder in my skull. The silence before the signal had returned, heavier this time, now pregnant with meaning. We boarded the Odyssey, a stealth diplomatic cruiser with more sensors than weapons, and aimed our trajectory toward Europa. As Earth receded behind us like a fragile blue jewel, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not venturing out to make contact. We were answering a call long overdue, like a child finally responding to a parent's forgotten voice. What awaited us there wasn't just another species. It was judgment, perhaps even deliverance. Or annihilation. Underscore 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 underscore. The voyage to Europa stretched across 3 Earth weeks, yet the passage of time aboard the Odyssey felt both compressed and infinite. The crew drifted between scientific obsession and psychological unease, trapped in a ship humming with alien frequency data and dread. Every system on board was operating flawlessly, AI-guided navigations, oxygen recyclers, inertia dampeners, but beneath the mechanical precision I sensed the emotional decay of those around me. Dr. Tanaka barely spoke now, her eyes locked to the ever-shifting language model the aliens had embedded in their transmission. It was growing, evolving, feeding off our own input like a parasite that learned its host's language mid-conversation. She called it convergent semiotics, a phenomenon where 2 distinct intelligences bend their syntax and symbols toward one another, not through translation but mutual adaptation. Yet there were anomalies, symbols she couldn't categorize, strange glyphs that triggered physiological reactions in the AI, causing glitches, slowdowns, even hallucinations in augmented reality displays. It's not just data, she whispered to me once as we passed Saturn's rings, her voice dry with exhaustion. It's intent. This message, it's alive. Meanwhile, Major Brandt was less poetic, more agitated. He spent hours in the combat simulator, despite orders, and reviewed security protocols obsessively. You don't send an invitation with a timer unless there's a consequence, he growled during one heated briefing. He wasn't wrong, and yet his suspicion gnawed at the morale of the rest of the crew. Everyone on the Odyssey had volunteered for this mission, drawn by curiosity or legacy or a longing for purpose, but none of us had truly anticipated what it would feel like to be dangling in the void, heading toward a meeting with the unknowable. At night, I stared out from the observation dome, watching the gas giants pass like gods in slumber, their storms eternal, their moons scattered like children in chaotic orbits. Europa grew closer, its icy shell glowing faintly from the reflection of Jupiter's fury. That moon had always fascinated Earth scientists, a potential cradle for alien microbial life beneath its frozen crust. But now it seemed a stage prepared for a drama that defied biology or physics. We began picking up more transmissions as we entered Jupiter's magnetic field. These weren't directed to us, not exactly. They were echoes, backscatter pings in complex geometries, like sonar thrown into a higher dimension. The AI dubbed them ghost harmonics. They weren't threats, but they weren't benign either. We recorded one sequence that caused every screen on the Odyssey to flash the same alien symbol in perfect sync. Tanaka said it meant witness. The countdown in the original message reached its final third. And then something happened that none of us were prepared for. The ship stopped. Not mechanically, every instrument said we were moving. But out the viewport, the stars froze. Jupiter remained in place. Europa no longer drifted. Even time aboard ship felt fixed. We weren't locked in stasis, we were locked in observation. "We've been caught," Brant muttered, drawing his weapon instinctively even though there was no enemy, no field of battle. Then the lights dimmed and a presence filled the ship. It wasn't audible. It was conceptual. We knew something was with us. Not aboard the ship physically, but layered over us like an echo standing beside its source. Every crew member fell silent. For the first time, we felt what it meant to be noticed by something greater. A warmth almost maternal curled through the air. Not comfort. Recognition. And in that moment, I understood this was the real beginning. The invitation hadn't brought us to Europa to witness alien life. It had brought us here to meet ourselves reshaped, reflected, measured through a lens not our own. What we would see next, I feared, would not be alien at all. It would be us seen through a mirror of stars. Underscore 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 underscore. The illusion of stasis shattered without warning, like a breath held too long finally escaping into the void. Europa loomed enormous now, an alabaster titan of frozen silence beneath us, its surface riddled with scars, deep fractures, and veins of glacial blue that shimmered under Jupiter's pale glow. The Odyssey resumed movement, though none of us felt acceleration. We had simply shifted. Telemetry couldn't explain it. The AI stammered through conflicting coordinates, unsure whether we had moved at all or been translocated by an external force. Gravitational displacement is impossible at this scale, Tanaka murmured, but her voice cracked under the weight of what her mind refused to dismiss. We were no longer entirely within known space. We hovered now over a massive circular formation etched into Europa's ice, so symmetrical it defied natural formation, kilometers wide, perfectly inscribed with spiraling patterns that mirrored the alien script from the original message. This was the meeting place. The timer reached 0. Nothing exploded. No divine being descended. But we felt something click into place, not outside, but inside each of us, like a forgotten memory slotted back into the archive of the soul. I gave the order to deploy the scout probe, a spider-legged drone bristling with sensors and linguistic interfaces. It skittered down toward the alien glyphs, scanning and transmitting in real time. What it recorded shouldn't have been possible. Beneath the ice, meters thick and sealed for eons. An enormous construct pulsed with golden light. Not a ship. Not a base. A mechanism. Alive, or at least aware. Its architecture resembled a neural lattice, vast and interwoven like a brain stretched across a cityscape. And as we watched, it moved. Not physically, but conceptually, portions of it dimmed while others brightened in deliberate succession as if responding to our attention. "It's communicating," Tanaka said, voice trembling with awe. "No. It's performing." Her words were confirmed seconds later when the ship's internal speakers activated unprompted and the AI, which had been silent since the presence event, recited a phrase in perfect synchrony with the lattice's pulse. "We remember your first scream." It was in our own language, though none of us had programmed it. A chill slithered through my spine. "What scream?" I asked aloud. The ship didn't respond. Tanaka, fingers flying over her console, uncovered a correlation between the lattice's patterns and ancient Earth seismic records, waves, tremors, frequencies. These signals match the profile of tectonic events from over 200,000 years ago, she said. But not Earth's tectonics. Mars. The Valles Marineris quake that cracked Olympus Mons. That was pre-human, Brant said. We weren't even carving tools yet. Tanaka looked up. Someone was. That's when the lattice shifted again, this time projecting holographic data directly into the Odyssey's central dome. We stood there, mouths agape, as alien symbology bloomed into star maps, DNA helixes, and a visual history not of their civilization, but of ours. Earth's continents through millennia from Pangaea to now. Hominid skulls evolving in time-lapse. Fire, language, war, music, not observed from afar, recorded from impossible proximity. We were watched, I whispered. Or created, Tanaka said, her voice now almost reverent. The holograms ended with a mirror, a literal, perfect reflective surface suspended in space, showing our own faces. But we were not alone in it. Standing behind each of us in the reflection were shadowy figures of indeterminate form, tall, luminous, faceless but not featureless. They weren't threatening. They were waiting. The lattice pulsed again and the AI's voice returned. Humanity has reached threshold potential. Choose your path. The lights dimmed. The images vanished. We stood in silence, the weight of that phrase sinking deeper with every breath. It wasn't a demand. It was a test. And the implication was clear: some civilizations pass. Others do not. Europa's machine waited. And we, the self-proclaimed apex of intelligence, were being asked to prove ourselves not through war or diplomacy, but choice. That's when the three paths appeared on our screens. Not directions. Not coordinates. Choices. One path labeled Dominion. Another Union. The third? Return. We didn't understand. Not yet. But we would. One choice would elevate us. Another would end us. And the last, I feared, would change everything we thought we knew about where we came from and what we were meant to become. Underscore, 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 underscore. There are moments in history when time ceases to be linear, when choice becomes weight and weight becomes destiny. We stood before the console in the Odyssey's command deck, eyes locked to the three words now displayed across every interface, burning like brands into our collective psyche: Dominion, Union, Return. These were not mere options, they were philosophies condensed into single words, each rippling with unseen consequence. Dr. Tanaka had begun analyzing the data patterns embedded in the holographic transmission, and what she discovered chilled us to our cores. Each word was accompanied by a distinct waveform, an encoded message hidden in the emotional resonance of the crew itself, an AI response calibrated not just to logic or input, but to our feelings. It's testing us on an emotional spectrum, she said. Our reactions, our fears, our hopes, they're being read not by sensors but by the lattice itself. The construct beneath Europa wasn't observing us with cameras or metrics. It was listening to our essence, to the psychic tremors that ripple beneath the skin of all sentient beings. And in that listening, it was judging. Major Brant immediately argued for Dominion. To him, the word signaled strength, command, and survival, a path that ensured humanity's place as a cosmic force. It's what got us here, he said, voice ironclad. We clawed our way up from mud and monsters. If they're giving us a throne, we take it. Tanaka, on the other hand, championed union. To her, it symbolized convergence, not submission, but harmony. This isn't a war. It's a reckoning, she said. Union means joining them, not as servants, but as peers. As learners. As contributors to something larger. I remained silent. The third choice, return, haunted me. No one could fully explain what it meant. The word shimmered oddly on the screen, almost flickering. It was as if it didn't belong or was meant only for certain minds. My instincts screamed that it wasn't a fallback. It wasn't going back to Earth. It was going back to before. Something older. Something buried. And as I stared at it, I felt it staring back. I had seen combat, lost friends, watched cities burn from orbit during the final decades of the resource wars. But nothing in my life had prepared me for this, to be the arbiter of humanity's future. One word would shape our legacy. The construct gave us no timeline, no pressure. It merely waited, as if it had all the time in the universe and we had only ourselves. That night, alone in my quarters, I dreamed of fire. Not war. Not destruction, but a fire that burned in patterns, language made from flame, spelling truths I could not unsee. In the dream, I stood in a field of stars, and a voice, not human, not synthetic, whispered, "You were always 3." I awoke gasping, and the ship's AI was already active. "Commander Rourke," it said calmly. "External temporal fluctuation detected. The construct is altering local causality." Europa had changed. From orbit, the entire moon now pulsed gently like a heart beating beneath translucent skin. The surface glyphs had rearranged. Not random. Not hostile. Responsive. Alive. We scanned again and discovered new information. Deep beneath the lattice, in Europa's liquid ocean, a secondary construct had activated. This one was older. Primitive. And it bore carvings in a language that predates all known scripts on Earth. "They were here before," Tanaka said breathlessly. "Before us. Before any of us." That was when we realized the 3 choices weren't doors to be opened. They were mirrors, and the one we chose would reflect not what we wanted, but who we were. Each word led to a different reality, not metaphorically, but literally. This machine, this intelligence, had seen the branching timelines of species before. Some chose power. Some chose harmony. Some chose the echo, the path of erasure or renewal. The word return didn't just mean back. It meant reset. To be unmade and remade. To re-enter the forge of the stars. We stood again before the interface. 3 words. 3 destinies. I felt the burden crack my breath. Then, without a word, Tanaka placed her hand over Union. Brant tightened his grip on his sidearm and hovered over Dominion. They looked to me. And in that silent triangle, we stood at the edge of becoming. Not just as individuals, but as a species. The lattice pulsed once more, and for the first time, the ship whispered a question in all our ears simultaneously, not from the speakers but inside our thoughts. "What are you when no one is watching?" And we knew we weren't being asked to choose our fate. We were being asked to choose ourselves. Underscore 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 underscore. We made the choice together, though the unity of that decision felt as fragile as starlight. After hours of debate, silence, and soul-searching, we selected Union. Not because it was the safest or easiest path, but because it was the only one that felt like it acknowledged the gravity of what we were becoming. I placed my palm on the console, fingers trembling, and as Tanaka followed suit, so did Brant, reluctantly, eyes narrow, his instincts roaring against the very nature of surrender. And yet he chose with us. The moment our hands met the surface, the interface sank like water beneath our touch, the word Union vanishing in a golden ripple that flowed outward across the control deck, the ship, the lattice itself. Light poured into the Odyssey, not from any source we could measure, but from the space between atoms, between thoughts, between moments. We became weightless not in body, but in time. The ship fell silent. No alerts, no whirring systems. Just stillness. Then came the hum. Low at first, harmonic, vibrating in our bones rather than our ears. Each of us began to see visions. Not illusions or hallucinations, but overlapping layers of reality like transparencies from different epochs superimposed over one another. I saw Earth as it once was, millions of years ago, raw, untouched, coiled in potential. I saw it as it might be, lush with impossible cities made of living architecture, floating in sky currents. Brant fell to his knees, clutching his chest, eyes wide as he stared into a memory not his own, a battle fought not with weapons but with wills, a war of thought between 2 dying civilizations, one of which bore the unmistakable silhouette of what could have been us. Tanaka whispered constantly now, her voice a stream of equations and poetic nonsense, cycling between languages, human and otherwise, as if decoding the entire lexicon of the cosmos in real time. The Odyssey was no longer a ship. It had become a prism through which consciousness passed and was refracted. We had merged, not physically, not entirely, but enough. Enough for the construct to accept our presence, enough for the mechanism beneath Europa to unfold itself, like a flower blooming across dimensions. The moon fractured. Not in destruction, but revelation. Great plates of ice folded outward, revealing a lattice chamber the size of a continent, crystalline and humming with life. We descended into it, not by thrusters, but by invitation. Gravity obeyed intention here. Time was subjective. We touched the surface of the chamber and found it warm, not heat, but welcome. The walls shifted around us, forming corridors and galleries of light, displaying holographic echoes of 1,000 species before us, some bipedal, others beyond comprehension. Each had made a choice. Some had faded. Others had thrived. A few had transcended. We stood before what Tanaka called the Codex, a living archive that mapped not only biology and technology, but morality, memory, and myth. It wasn't a database. It was a soul that now included us. We were asked no questions, given no commands. Only shown our history as the stars saw it. The genocide, the poetry, the hunger, the beauty, the resilience. "You are the youngest of many," said the AI, its voice now plural, a harmony of tones across our minds. "But your pattern is fractal, capable of recursion, capable of return." We didn't understand. Not fully. But we felt it. The echo. The loop. Humanity had done this before, maybe not in this form, not in this place, but somewhere. Somewhen. And now we were being given a second beginning. Brandt asked the only question that mattered: what happens now? The answer did not come in words. It came in sensation. We were enveloped in light, pure consciousness. And in that moment, we were them. The ones who watched, who waited, who offered choice. We saw through eyes that had watched stars die and be reborn. We felt what it meant to be an interstellar bridge for civilizations teetering on the edge of maturity. We were told, not in command but invitation, that we could join them not as subjects, not as children, but as custodians. We were the newest node in a network older than time, a network built not from circuits or matter but from decisions. Every civilization that had chosen union now formed a lattice of understanding, empathy, balance. We could add to it, shape it, become part of the force that guided emergent species through their crucibles. "But you must first go back," said the voice. "You must walk among them, carry what you have seen, not as prophets, not as rulers, but as witnesses." And just like that, it ended. We awoke aboard the Odyssey, now in stable orbit above Europa. The chamber was gone, the lattice sealed. Our logs showed only hours had passed, though we remembered lifetimes. Earth had not changed. Humanity remained as fragile, as volatile, as brilliant as we had left it. But we were different. The stars were watching, and now, so were we. We returned to Earth in silence, not because there was nothing to say, but because the language we once used now felt too small for the truth we carried. The Odyssey touched down at the Geneva Aerodrome under the veil of a global blackout. Our re-entry masked by cloaked satellites and controlled atmospheric bursts that rendered our descent invisible to the public eye. Only the highest-ranking officials of the Unified Earth Directorate were notified, their faces pale through the holoscreens as they watched us step off a ship no longer recognizable by its original schematics. It had changed subtly. Materials had shifted in structure. Hull composition now registered as dynamic crystalline memory, a phrase that sent engineers into months of analysis. But the real change wasn't in the vessel. It was in us. The moment we touched Earth's soil again, we felt the gravity of our species return. Not the pull of mass, but the weight of blindness. People walked streets unaware that we were now part of something beyond them, something among them. And that realization was unbearable. Brandt, ever the soldier, requested immediate psychological clearance, citing disassociation with baseline reality. He was diagnosed with cosmic trauma, which psychologists now struggle to define, let alone treat. He would later vanish from medical oversight, leaving behind only a note: "I have seen the mirror. I choose to remain." Tanaka retreated into research, sealing herself inside the Halicon facility's subterranean core, attempting to map what she called the symphonic conscience, a multidimensional model of the Codex's influence on neural evolution. Her writings became increasingly abstract, filled with recursive equations, musical notations, and metaphorical blueprints. One paper ended simply with, "To remember is to become." I, on the other hand, was pulled into endless briefings, my words parsed like sacred texts by politicians who sought either to weaponize what we'd learned or bury it. But I couldn't give them what they wanted. I didn't know what we had truly become. Only that we had touched something eternal and it had chosen not to destroy us. Yet, They kept asking about the construct, its nature, its power, its threat level. It's not a weapon, I repeated. It's a reflection. That didn't satisfy them. Nothing did. Governments fractured along predictable lines. The West saw an opportunity. The East saw a challenge. Others denied anything had happened at all. Propaganda began leaking, conspiracy videos of alien contact, mysterious symbols appearing in rural landscapes, sightings of ghost satellites over the poles. The truth was hemorrhaging through the cracks of denial. And still, the codex pulsed in our minds. Not as a memory, but a living presence. We could feel it watching, not with judgment, but expectation, waiting to see what we would do with what we had been shown. Some of us began dreaming in alien symbology fractals that unfolded into concepts beyond comprehension. Others, myself included, began to hear the lattice again, faint whispers behind static, encoded in background radiation and planetary hums. The Earth was not alone anymore, and she was beginning to feel it. Then came the Children of the Union. That's what they called themselves. Not a cult, not a rebellion, a movement. Comprised of artists, philosophers, former scientists, and disillusioned youth, they believed the Union wasn't just a choice we made, it was a transformation still underway. We are becoming latticeborn, they preached. One choice at a time. They rejected conflict, rejected hierarchy. They built structures of bioluminescent glass and harmonized resonance fields, claiming it brought them closer to the presence. Authorities labeled them extremists. A few vanished. A few glowed. Literally. We don't know how. Meanwhile, underground networks began stealing research data from Helicon, determined to decipher what the Directorate had hidden. They discovered fragments, glyphs, neurosequence anomalies, even subtle magnetic shifts in the brain scans of those who had contact with the lattice. The term codex imprint entered the lexicon. What none of them knew, and what I dared not say aloud, was that the imprint wasn't limited to us. The Earth was changing subtly. Plants began exhibiting unusual growth patterns in previously barren zones. Certain animal migrations began aligning with geometric patterns we recognized from Europa. The planet was responding, not violently, not invasively, but rhythmically. A call and answer. And at night, if you stood in a truly silent place, no cities, no signal interference, you could feel it. Like a heartbeat beneath the world. We were no longer simply passengers on this planet. We were part of a system waking up. But not all welcomed the awakening. A splinter faction known as the Dominion Protocol emerged from within Earth's secret militarized AI divisions. Their creed was simple: control or perish. They believed the lattice was a test we must dominate, not embrace. Their doctrine warned of species who had chosen union and been absorbed, losing their identity. In some great cosmic sponge. We will not be digested, said one of their operatives before detonating a quantum disruptor at an orbital listening post. 73 lives lost. The first blood in a war we didn't yet understand. And so we stand now at a precipice, not of survival, but of meaning. The Union has begun, but not all will walk its path. Some will fight it. Some will flee it. And some will carry its truth like a virus into every corner of human culture. I look up at the stars each night and wonder not if they're watching, but when they'll speak again. And whether, when they do, we'll still be able to understand. Underscore 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 underscore. The fracture came not with warheads or orbital strikes, but with stories, competing truths told with the certainty of zealots. Across Earth, the echoes of Europa's revelations stirred the deepest instincts of our species: awe, fear, curiosity, and defiance. The Directorate failed to contain the narrative. Leaked files, testimony fragments, anomalous footage from within the Odyssey's post-contact logs, they all found their way into the neural feeds. A single image of the Union glyph projected across a blackened sky above Europa's lattice chamber became a symbol for a movement larger than any one government could predict. Protests erupted in megacities, thousands kneeling in silence, arms stretched skyward, bodies arranged in spiraling patterns mimicking the Codex's fractals. Not chance, not violence, just presence, a resonance of purpose. But for every gathering of believers, there came a doubling of doubters. The Dominion Protocol, once a fringe doctrine of militarized paranoia, gained mainstream momentum. Their narrative was sharper, easier. We were tested. We were infiltrated. And now we must reclaim ourselves before we are erased. They showed videos of Europa's lattice chamber rendered in threatening red overlays paired with soundtracks of simulated planetary destruction. To the frightened, it looked like proof. Return Earth to Earth, they shouted in neural campaigns. We are not code. We are not pawns. Civil society began to split not between countries, but between interpretations. Were we chosen, or were we prey? Was union an elevation or an indoctrination? In Paris, children of the Union restructured the Eiffel Tower into a resonant antenna claiming it would sync with the codex. In Tokyo, AI swarms encoded alien glyphs into the cherry blossom genomes, creating trees that bloomed in shifting bioluminescent pulses. In Alaska, the Dominion seized an orbital uplink array and launched a black site probe back to Europa, armed, unsanctioned, and bound for the lattice chamber. They called it Operation Null Echo. It never returned. And then Europa pulsed again. The codex had remained quiet, dormant beneath the moon's ice shell. But as Earth tore itself into ideological war zones, a new signal emerged, short, rhythmic, and urgent. Unlike the first, this one offered no invitation. It offered warning. Tanaka, still decoding symphonic harmonics from her isolated lab beneath Iceland's volcanic crust, triangulated the transmission with ancient seismic records. What she found horrified her. A recurring planetary pattern. Every species that made contact with the codex had entered a tipping point, not unlike ours. The codex did not impose evolution. It accelerated what was already within. It amplified choice. And in many cases choice had destroyed them. It's not a test of technology, she told me during one of our encrypted holo calls. It's a test of self. A mirror that burns away the lies we live by. Most species don't survive their own reflection. Her voice broke, and I felt the same fear I'd seen in Brandt's eyes the day we chose union. The fear that we were not ready. That we had stared into the cosmos hoping for family and instead found judgment. Still, I refused to believe it was hopeless. Humanity had endured so much wars, famine, collapse, and rebirth. Perhaps we were flawed, fractured, even violent. But we were also stubborn, creative, capable of mercy in the midst of madness. The codex hadn't ended us. It had offered us a bridge. And bridges go two ways. So we built our own. Quietly, secretly, within the forgotten caverns of Antarctica's ice shelves, we began Project Centaura, a resonance node designed not to reach the codex, but to respond to it. To show that we could listen as much as speak. That we could contribute, not just consume. Artists, philosophers, quantum engineers, even defectors from the Dominion Protocol all worked in silence, away from the chaos above. We poured into the node not weapons or codes, but stories. Our music. Our myths. Our grief. And our hopes. We called it the offering. When it was complete, we launched it into space, not toward Europa, but toward the closest lattice vector. We didn't aim to impress. We aimed to be understood. Then the waiting began. Weeks passed, then months. The Earth raged on, factions rising and falling like waves. New York's skyline was reshaped by a rogue codex-sympathizing architect who created structures that sang in harmonic resonance with ambient magnetic fields. India's lunar colony declared neutrality and began forming a new religion centered around the first reflection. And beneath it all, the codex remained quiet, listening, processing, judging. Until one night, the stars blinked. Not metaphorically, literally. For precisely 108 seconds, every major observatory on Earth recorded an anomaly. The stars in the night sky dimmed in a synchronized cascade, forming a ripple that passed across the galaxy like a breath. Tanaka called me immediately, her voice shaking. They've answered. I asked her what they said. Her reply was simple. Terrifying. Hopeful. They said, we are not alone in choosing union. And now others are watching. Underscore 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 underscore. We were never meant to stay small. That was the final truth the codex revealed, not through words, not even through light, but through becoming. The starfield anomaly, the synchronized dimming of the galaxy's oldest lights, was not a signal in the traditional sense. It was a gesture, an invitation into the vast lattice of intelligences that had chosen union long before we even knew how to dream. Humanity, for the first time, had not merely been acknowledged, we had been seen. And now others were watching, not the aliens we expected with silver ships and bug-eyed helmets, but civilizations so ancient they no longer defined themselves by matter or biology. Entities who spoke in gravitational waves and gestured through the spin of quasars. Entities who had chosen not to dominate or consume, but to guide from the edge of perception. We were not one of them. Not yet. But we had been welcomed to the threshold. As the message rippled outward, Earth stood suspended between awe and madness. The Dominion Protocol, reeling from the silence of their failed probe and the undeniable Starfield event, fractured violently. Some of their members defected to the Children of the Union, openly denouncing their former ideology. Others fled underground, still believing Earth must prepare for war against an unseen conqueror. The Children themselves began evolving, not through doctrine, but through resonance. Across the world, those attuned to the Codex's harmonic presence began to display strange abilities. Not powers in the comic book sense. Subtler. An artist in Lagos who could paint patterns that made the viewer weep without knowing why. A child in Brazil who could solve unspoken questions with a glance. A blind woman in Kazakhstan who began composing music in frequencies that healed neural trauma. They didn't call themselves prophets. They called themselves bridges. And Earth began listening. Governments fell. New alliances formed, not based on borders or wealth, but on how each region chose to interpret the Codex's presence. The Northern Union adopted harmonic governance, allowing AI overseers to mediate conflict through emotional resonance metrics. The Pacific Terraces declared themselves a listening state, broadcasting continuous music toward Europa in hopes of fostering deeper communion. The old world crumbled, and from its ashes something new grew, chaotic, uncertain, but undeniably awake. As for us, the crew of the Odyssey, we had become symbols. Not heroes. Not saints. Just witnesses. Brant never returned. His last transmission showed him walking alone into the tundra north of Alberta, his body humming with faint bioluminescent pulses. We believe he chose to merge fully with the Codex imprint, becoming something between man and echo. Tanaka vanished during a global broadcast in which she dissolved into light mid-sentence, leaving behind only her final words: "We are the question. And we are the answer." As for me, I stayed. Not to lead, but to remind. I speak now not from command decks or secure rooms, but from quiet places, villages, ruins, forest glades, where people still look up and wonder. I remind them that the Codex didn't come to save us. It came to reflect us. And in doing so, it offered a gift, the opportunity to rise without conquest, to evolve without erasure. We are not unified in belief. We are not finished. But we are awake. And that, perhaps, is enough. Recently, a new signal emerged. This time not from Europa, but from the stars beyond, far beyond, from a point near the galactic edge where no civilization had ever been known to exist. The signal bore only one symbol, a spiral, incomplete. Tanaka would have called it a call to journey. Others say it means we're being summoned. I believe it means the Codex has opened the next gate. We are no longer alone. And more importantly, we are no longer lost. Earth has become a node in the living map of sentience, a flickering ember in a constellation of minds who have looked into the abyss and chosen not fear, but understanding. The lattice grows, one civilization at a time. It doesn't conquer. It gathers. And now, with everything we were, everything we are, and everything we may yet be, we stand among the stars, not as conquerors or beggars, but as bridges. Witnesses. Union-born. We were the scream. Now we are the answer. And as the stars whisper back across the fabric of space-time, we whisper with them, echoing the truth encoded in every fracture and every choice. We are becoming.